that your natural inclination is to be up here when you do something, and you just want to feel like you're releasing that tension or strain, and you're bringing the shoulders down, and you also want to feel like you're bringing them down and back. That's going to help you to open up at the front of the body, and it's also going to activate those upper back muscles. If you've noticed that you've been rounding, just kind of say to yourself, okay, shoulders down and back, pull the shoulder blades together, open up at the front of the body. It's Rashida and Marshall. Thank you so much for checking out this video. If it's your first time, welcome. Be sure to hit the subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all future wellness chats and dance tutorials, Pilates workouts, and everything in between. And for those who are returning, as I say in every video and will continue to do so, thank you so much for your support. I'm very glad that you're continuing to come back, check out more videos, and I hope you enjoy what I have for you here today. So this is going to be a quick wellness chat discussing posture. This particular topic is one that comes up often as I'm working with clients as a Pilates instructor, especially those who are newer to Pilates, and if if one of their reasons for starting Pilates is because they want to improve their posture, then we'll spend those first few sessions really touching on how the body should feel, what muscles are working, how you want to keep them engaged, and things of that nature. As we get older, it becomes so much more easier to find comfort in a slouched position, or to just go into a default of maybe what we've been doing over and over and over again at work or when we're at home or whatever the case is. So I think when you can start early and be more aware regularly, then you'll be able to correct it and ensure that you don't have discomfort or other issues later down the line. So we're going to start by going from the head and working our way down. And I'll just point out some things that will help for you to think about and things that you can easily correct, especially if you're sitting here and watching this now, some things that you can do that will help with your posture. One thing that's really helpful is to imagine that there is maybe a string coming from the top of the head, and it's just kind of gently lifting you more toward the ceiling. So lifting the crown more towards the sky. So what that helps to do is create length throughout the neck, and it helps for you to keep the lift of the head. What happens a lot is our heads will jut forward because we're looking at our phone or the computer, or looking down or something like that, and we get that compression in the cervical spine because we don't have that range of motion and that lift. I like to say often, imagine that you're creating space between the shoulders and the ears, and that'll tie into another thing that we'll mention in just a little bit. So try to visualize that you're creating a little more space there. You're lifting the head, and nothing that has to be exaggerated or strained, but just notice from where you might be sitting now. If you're just kind of like this, just take a moment to lift the head just a bit and find like you're trying to add some inches to the neck there. You're just trying to get a little more lift. That's really helpful to be aware of. Now, if we start to move down, and you can imagine, or we're going to move down to the shoulders. So just as we said, creating space between the shoulders and the ears, you can also do that by feeling like you're drawing the shoulders down the back. So if your shoulders are rounded forward, or if you tend to be in a position where your arms are up, or depending on the work that you do or something, you might find that your natural inclination is to be up here when you do something, and you just want to feel like you're releasing that tension or strain, and you're bringing the shoulders down, and you also want to feel like you're bringing them down and back. So rather than forward, feel like you're bringing the shoulder blades together. That's going to help you to open up at the front of the body, and it's also going to activate those upper back muscles. So those upper back muscles are not working when we're like this, but they're working when you have to pull up, draw them together, and work to keep the lift of upper body. So that's another thing to be aware of too. If you've noticed that you've been rounding, just kind of say to yourself, okay, shoulders down and back, pull the shoulder blades together, open up at the front of the body, and that'll be really helpful. So now we'll move down and we'll discuss the abdominals and the mid and low back and the core and how that plays a part as well. So what's really important is to ensure or to be aware of your core muscles working to keep you in your upright position. So our transverse abdominis is our deepest layer of the core, and it plays a huge role in stabilizing the body. So it plays a part when you are, even if you're doing other types of exercise, if you're just walking throughout your day-to-day life, it helps with being able to shift positions and move and things like that, and holding us upright. So it plays a major role in the body. So when our transverse abdominis is not engaged, or if we are not using it regularly or aware of it, then it makes it very easy to slouch and to be in positions where you're not working to hold yourself upright. So when you are thinking of pulling the abdominals in and up, that's a way that can help for you to activate that deeper layer. That it's really helpful to connect to your breath as well with that too. And if you want to even practice, we can do a quick demo here. You can place your hands at the body, at the core in the front. And now as you're taking a breath in, inhale, feel like you're breathing into the belly. And you might notice that your fingers want to space apart just a little bit. Now, as you exhale, think less of the chest, but feel like you're pressing the air out from the belly. And while you're doing that, you're not exhaling and slumping down, but you're exhaling and feel like you're lifting taller. And imagine you're wearing a corset, right? So it's kind of tightening and bracing from that inner deep layer, and that's going to help to activate your transverse abdominis. So that's a way just to be aware of it. If you notice that you've been slouched over, or standing for a long time in an uncomfortable position, or laying down, you can use that as a way just to get that engagement. And the more that you practice that, you're going to continue to work those muscles, train them, be more aware, and that's going to help for you to know whether you're standing, sitting, lying down, if you are not in your ideal alignment of the spine. So that can be really useful to practice. And think of pulling the abdominals again in and up, and that's going to help for you to lift. It shouldn't be anything where you're holding your breath. You shouldn't feel like you're holding tension. You should still be able to talk, move, sit up tall, but it's stabilizing you and holding you there as you do all of those things. So that's very beneficial, and that will help you not just with your posture, but just day to day in all of your activities, moving, exercising, things like that. So that's a great thing to think about, is engaging the core, the transverse abdominis, that deeper layer. And in connection with that, that's also going to help for you to ensure that it's working in conjunction with your mid and your lower back as well. So you might notice that you tend to have tightness in the low back. That could be because the core is not being engaged and working as we want it to, or you're straining, overcompensating with the low back to help you with staying upright. You might sometimes be in a position where you're arching the low back and putting more work there. And again, if you have the core working, it's going to help to work there as well. And over time, especially if you're starting out, you might feel like not a strain, but you'll feel those back muscles working. And that's something that I see often, is that it'll be really hard for some individuals to stay upright. So when you're working on those two things together, it's kind of like they're working in opposition to stabilize the body. Now, if we continue to move down, we'll go to the pelvis, and we'll talk briefly about our sits bones. So our sits bones are a part of our pelvis, and this is something that you might hear often if you take a Pilates class. The sits bones are the bony parts of the butt. So to find those, if you're seated right now, and if this is something that you can do that won't look awkward depending on where you are, you can place your hands underneath the butt and try to find the bony part in the butt, right? If you just kind of move around, it takes a moment just to find, but you should feel just two bony parts right at the bottom. Those are our sits bones. So now you want to be sitting up on your sits bones, which is going to help to ensure that your pelvis is in its neutral position. When we're slouched, we're out of our neutral and the pelvis is tilting backwards. And then if we're arching or straining the low back, then the pelvis is tilting forward. So you want to find a position, ideally when you're seated, where you are sitting up on the sits bones. That's going to help for you to keep the pelvis in its neutral position. But if you just imagine that you're lifting up tall, more often than not, it's going to help for you to prevent yourself from going in one direction or the other. So the last thing, we would move down to the feet. So if you're someone who sits often, you would want to think 90 degrees at the hips and 90 degrees at the knees, and you would want to have those feet firmly rooted down. If you're more petite and it's harder to get, the feet to reach the ground, you could use a box or a stack of books or something that you can comfortably rest your feet on. And vice versa, if you're someone who's taller and you maybe need to adjust the chair that you're sitting on, or whatever the case is, the positioning of your desk and all those type of things, so that you can be in a better position when you are sitting down. So that's something that may not always be available, but it's just something to be aware of and to know. So I know most of the tips that we discussed focused on what to think about when you are sitting. As it pertains to standing, some things that are really helpful is to, again, feel like you have the feet firmly rooted down, all edges of the feet rooted and grounded into the floor. Still feel like you're lifting up tall. Okay, so you're still in that neutral pelvis. You want to notice if you are, again, tucking or slouching back. That's going to mean that the pelvis is not in neutral. And then vice versa, if you're really straining or arching the low back and the pelvis is tilting forward, even while you're standing, you would want to think, again, pull the abdominals in and up, lift tall, and that'll help for you to keep the hips over the heels while you're in a standing upright position. You still want to think of the shoulders being drawn down and back, still want to think of lifting tall. And one thing to notice is if you are flaring the rib cage. So pay attention to that too. And if you are starting to really strain and exaggerate bringing the shoulder blades together, you would want to come out of that and just make it a gentle down and back feeling at the upper body that you have. So that is it for our discussion on posture. Hopefully these are helpful tips that you can carry with you and begin to implement throughout your day-to-day activities that will help for you to feel more tall and lifted. So thank you for watching, and until next time, you all have a good one. Bye.